Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How's everyone doing out there? Inscribing Amsterdam, let's go. Hoorah. Thank you so much to Aaron and everyone that put this on. This is a really special event. Feels good, man. Really happy to be here. Yeah, thanks for kind of squeaking us in last minute. We really appreciate it so much. I'm joined with Gabriel Shipton and Erik Cason.
Hello.
Two wonderful gentlemen that have a lot to say. Very smart, articulate, and caring people, and great freedom fighters. So really honored to be here, talk about, this kind of new technology, or arguably, or a new way to do something that's been done for a long time. Let's put it that way. So we're going to be talking about using the inscription protocol and ordinals, the ordinal protocol and inscriptions as sort of a publishing technology. Why don't we? We'll start with Gabriel. This was something that your brother Julian understood very early on in the Bitcoin life cycle, really before anyone, very publicly was making statements. Certainly, someone of his caliber, and understood that Bitcoin is something that, while many things, it's a database, and it's a monetary policy that's upheld by this database, but it is a database at its core. And he referred to this phrase, Orwell's dictum, and how Bitcoin breaks Orwell's dictum. Do you mind just kind of giving us a little overview of how Bitcoin actually breaks Orwell's dictum, what Orwell's dictum is, and why we're here today to talk about it?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, good to be with you, Erik and Mark, and hey, everyone. It was back, I think, 2014 when Julian, first spoke about, Bitcoin breaking Orwell's dictum. Was in Nantucket, where he appeared as a hologram from inside the Ecuadorian embassy, where he took refuge for 7 years. He was taken out of there in 2019 and has spent the last 4 years in a maximum security prison. But Orwell's dictum is he who controls the present controls the past, and he who controls the past controls the future. And it was all about talking about information and the way that information is stored and kept in a digital way online on servers or wherever it may be, and how that information can change or be changed over time. And you can look back, during the Soviet era, where people, they would change the encyclopedias or change photos, and it was quite easy to tell. You could tell there'd been pages ripped out or people disappeared from photos. But in a digital world, it becomes harder and harder to tell when things are adjusted or changed, and things get memory hold. I think that was another expression of Orwell's. And so Bitcoin came along, and the blockchain technology and this distributed ledger or database that Mark was talking about. And the way that works, it's these entries onto the ledger that will be there forever, and they're passed around, they're distributed. You have that consensus that means that they cannot be changed, and so that breaks Orwell's dictum. Once you post something, once a transaction goes through, you can have that there, and that's there forever, and can't be altered. So in that way, it would break Orwell's dictum. And I think WikiLeaks at that time was using hashes to identify time of publishing, on the blockchain. But now with this Project Spartacus, which is the new project that's just come out, you have actual documents being inscribed to the Bitcoin blockchain. So you're going one step further than Julian had imagined at that time.
Yeah. Also, I would say, kind of in doing research for the Gatekeepers issue that we did at Bitcoin Magazine, I was, looking into, kind of how WikiLeaks had used Bitcoin previously, and you can actually go through and find all of these transactions in 2014 that WikiLeaks was using the blockchain to store data cables and files, and including a download tool, actually. And use a lot of clever ways to demarcate them, including sending one of the 700 outputs to a Satoshi era wallet. So I highly recommend going back and looking through some of that era. There's a lot of transactions and fun things already in there. Erik, I wanted to throw it to you about what are the implications of having this distributed ledger, this immutable, durable, censorship-resistant database. Obviously, the reason why it's incentivized is from this monetary policy standpoint, but there's kind of a bigger thing here. So, why are you here? Why did you want to come talk with us about this? What really gets you off about, breaking Orwell's dictum?
Yeah, so, hi, my name is Erik Cason. I've been involved with Bitcoin for a little more than 10 years now, helped build a couple major companies. But I'm really here because, I'm an anarchist first and foremost. I'm an anarchist of the cypherpunk lineage. And to me, number go up in the monetary mediums of this, I could care less about. It's like a fun feature that, I'm happy that the market is with us on this. But at the end of the day, to me, Bitcoin is fundamentally an anarchist project, and it represents the ability to organize along non-state lines to be able to fight the state on every possible front. And so, Casey, I know Casey and Aaron from the Hell Money podcast, cool people. When I saw what Casey was building at first, I was like, all right, this is interesting. It's cool to see people playing with it. And then he posted an image of Tank Man. And I was like, fucking that, right there. So if you're not familiar with Tank Man, there's an image of a man standing in front of 3 tanks during the Tiananmen Square protests. And we actually don't know who he is or what happened to him. But what he represents is a single individual after the absolute brutality of more than 6,000 people being killed the night before and essentially washed down gutters, and nobody knows what happened to, most of these people are just missing still. This courageous man standing in front of these tanks and was pretty much like, fuck you, I don't care that you're tanks. And it's a very powerful image if you see the whole thing, because there's just 3 tanks, but there's actually a line of about 20 tanks. And he stops all of them by standing in front of them. This is a very illegal image to have in China, and now directly on Bitcoin's blockchain, you can look at that. And to me, this is the radical power and technology in Bitcoin that is the primary component of why I give a shit about what we can do with inscriptions. And to me, it's extremely important that we maintain this thread of anti-state anarchist ideology within Bitcoin, because none of this matters whatsoever if we can't actually free ourselves from the state and the general oppression and tyranny that Julian is the preeminent example of, and that we all owe directly to him a lot of the cypherpunk lineage that we inherited from before.
Incredibly well said. I completely agree. And so in regards to that, you're bringing up how this new technology and this new tooling can kind of enable revolutionary action through distributed data and having clear access to the information that we need to make the decisions that we need to make. We need to be aware of the problem to find solutions. So. Gabriel, I'm curious, we talked a little bit yesterday about this, but, of course there's literally storing data in Bitcoin, but how can this technology, help incentivize content that, kind of pushes the finger in the eye of the gatekeepers of free speech and of free press? How can Bitcoin, or maybe what do Bitcoiners need to do? What kind of systems architecture do we need to build to incentivize and perpetuate, journalism and free speech and free press in this panopticon we live in?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think that, there's a sort of very opportune moment, right now for the sort of merging of these two technologies, the monetary network as well as a publishing, a publishing network, a sort of immutable publishing network that can't be taken down. You've seen, the mainstream media is losing audience massively, right? I think for the first time in the last 50 years, their approval rating or people believing what they're saying is under 50%. And so you have this sort of emergence, this huge emergence of independent journalism. And, I think connecting with these independent journalists, you have all these subscription platforms like Substack or Medium, etc. But they're all still reliant on these old payment methods Visa, MasterCard, PayPal. All the data is stored in the old way, on servers, all behind, all sort of, centralized servers. So you have that issue, and I think there's this opportunity now for this technology to be taken to these independent journalists and said, well, you can publish immutably, something that's distributed, can never be taken down, and they can't fuck with your money either. They can't cut off your money if you say something that they don't like, which is happening more and more. It happened to WikiLeaks back in 2011. They had their PayPal cut off, MasterCard, Visa, all extra legal, no legal rules to have that done, and they turned to Bitcoin, and that was sort of the first use case of Bitcoin as uncensorable money. But you're seeing more and more of this happen, the grey zone, independent news outlets like the grey zone, Mint Press News, having their PayPal shut down, their payment processing shut down, and having to look for alternatives. So I think there's this moment now for Bitcoin and Inscriptions to combine these two technologies and take that to journalists and say, it's a pretty attractive thing if you're a journalist to have your material inscribed forever and never to be changed, and it can give them courage to bring us truthful information because they have no longer be afraid of having their payments cut off.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, I think you bring up an interesting, the extra legal thing where these private sector people are getting phone calls from their friends in the public sector, and then all of a sudden their banking, is shut off. And so, Erik, I think we've talked a lot about kind of some of these things and how. Can we even really create can we take back the public square, or do we need to recreate our own and an alternative public square? How do you kind of view the actual methodology of circumnavigating these gatekeepers and getting a public square of discourse where we can actually have these conversations to progress this revolution forward?
Great question. So first of all, I see myself kind of participating in a lineage of strategic and tactical applications of anarchist tactics in order to be able to advance our cause. And Bitcoin and uncensorable publishing is unequivocally one of the most powerful and meaningful methodologies, and it is not enough. There also needs to be a general cultural war in understanding what they're doing is illegal, unconstitutional, despicable, immoral, and unethical, and we should all speak publicly and openly about how fucking disgusting it is. And people that participate in this network to position directly to them ethical questions about what you are doing is actually wrong. You will be held accountable at some point in time, and I understand that you're so callow that you can't see a future where you're actually the enemy that you are. And this is what these people do. They are manipulating us intentionally. They are gaslighting us and feeding us misinformation. And if you haven't been paying attention over the last 3 years, you either have significant cognitive dissonance or you're shoving your head in the sand and not pay attention. Because what's going on is a very, very extreme danger. And if you haven't been watching how the technological panopticon is ramping up, most people are deeply captured and asleep and have no fucking clue how bad things are. And to me, the reason that we need to both be using journalism and Bitcoin in combination is because one of these payment rails being cut off of that, with Russell Brand in the UK we just saw, saying anything against this agenda, they will mount a full-scale attack against you and crush you. And we have inverted the dictum to where it's no longer innocent until proven guilty. You're guilty until you prove your innocence. This is the methodology that the world wants to capture humans in, all humans everywhere today, because it is part of a state-based paradigm of fear and terror that it needs to identify everything, everywhere, all the time, for any means it sees fit, because at any point in time, you could already possibly be the enemy. And anyone in this room today, if you are labeled as a terrorist or an enemy combatant, you will find yourself in the same position as Julian Assange for the same reasons. Because you chose to do the right thing and to stand up and speak the truth, you will find yourself deeply victimized by a society that doesn't understand you because they're so thoroughly manipulated. So using inscriptions, we can embed information in a way that allows for it not to be fucked with, so that when we see the Stalin photo with him standing with 3 of his subcommandants and another image later where it's him by himself, we can figure out which one is real, and we can go, oh shit, they vanished, those people. So I think it's very, very important that we understand, as fun and interesting as this is, and as much as we're playing with art and other things, there's a very serious mission that all of us need to take very seriously because of what it impels could happen to all of us if we don't take it seriously.
Clip that. That was great. Yeah, 1,000, yeah, billion%. I think that's something that you know, a few folks kind of understood, you know, right away at the beginning, that there was probably a much bigger implication to this technology, and it's something that I've, you know, talked to, you know, some of the maintainers now, you know, that like you guys are creating and working on really important cypherpunk tooling. And while I think the art case is beautiful, and I'm very happy to be here and amongst the artists because they are my people, you know, I think there really is a potential for a greater mission here. Even though I think art is one of the most important parts of being, of course. But the truth is what makes art so special. And we can use this technology to perpetuate truth. And I think we saw this really recently with this this anonymous project that came out a few days ago that is actually, you know, leveraging this technology to inscribe, you know, previously, you know, published war logs from the Afghan war onto Bitcoin. And I think, you know, really interestingly, I mean, there's a couple, you know, potential criticisms you could have of the way that it was done, in terms of actually scaling and getting as much information on there as possible. You know, maybe using text files over SVGs. There's a few things, but I think, you know, the group that did it had solved kind of a really interesting issue for, you know, the scaling issues of putting data on Bitcoin, which is they kind of created a way to do like a public mint, where people can come in and crowdsource, you know, large data sets to distribute them over blocks and put them into Bitcoin, which I think that the implications of that tooling, it could be exceptionally important as we go forward. So, Gabriel, I was just kind of curious. I know, you know, we just kind of texted about it when we saw it, but you know, what are your thoughts on, you know, this Project Spartacus and you know, that this group kind of, you know, doing this project in solidarity, but also really like the implications of the tooling and the proof of concept. You know, how do you see this kind of moving forward? You know, what excites you about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I first came across the project, I thought, well, you know, it's pretty cool. You know, continuing of Julian's legacy, using the Bitcoin blockchain, but also that it was I think a real call out to the community, like a moment of solidarity, that people could stand with Julian by publishing this information to the Bitcoin blockchain, publish the same information that he is imprisoned for, you know, at the moment, that he's charged under the Espionage Act for publishing, and then you know, sort of this idea of a crowd coming together to stand up and say, I did the same thing, you know. That sort of, I guess it's that scene from the Spartacus movie where there's a valley full of slaves, and they come up and the Romans arrive and they say, which one of you is Spartacus? You know, we will spare all your lives if you hand over Spartacus. And eventually the whole valley of slaves is standing up saying, I'm Spartacus, I'm Spartacus. So this idea that, you know, the Bitcoin community can all, you know, stand up and potentially save Julian by publishing all this information. That's, I found that really, like, you know, really cool idea, and sort of hit me in the heart, you know, that people were out there willing to come forward with this sort of idea. And then you've got the technology aspect and the tooling aspect of you know, crowdfunding or crowdsourcing the archiving of this information, which is you know, WikiLeaks is constantly under attack, right? Like their databases are constantly under attack, and they've focused so much on fighting to free Julian now that there is a real risk that this sort of information is lost forever. And crowdsourcing the archiving of it to the Bitcoin blockchain, I thought was you know, really special idea as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that that's a really important point. That a lot of the archives that are out there are in danger of being restricted access to. I think obviously WikiLeaks I think set the standard for how to distribute archives, how to validate them. They're incredible, literally impeccable record of never posting an erroneous file in any way. But there are absolute issues with the torrent model to some degree, in that it relies on incentivizing seeders. So for the first point, I think so many of us understand how important this work is, but maybe we don't take on the self-responsibility of what we need to do to continue this legacy. And one of the things we need to do is fucking look at the fucking things they published and read these archives and seed them. There's enough information in Bitcoin, in the WikiLeaks archive, to really begin to unravel and pull this veil that's been in front of us of this is hidden hand behind the curtain. Enough of that is out there, and eventually it comes on us to do this in not just intentions, but actual actions. And there's a lot of things that can be done there to sort of incentivize the distribution of this data, and also the parsing through it. So, Erik, I'm curious, like, how do you see Bitcoin, incentivizing people to actually go through these things and to store these things and to distribute these things? Obviously there's some limitation to how much data we can shove in a block. How do you see that developing moving forward? What do Bitcoiners need to do now to help Julian to perpetuate his legacy, to help him get back out and continue his work? What's our responsibility now as Bitcoiners and as humans?
Well, so first of all, one of the reasons I was excited when Inscriptions came up is I'm really big with play with Bitcoin as much as you want, fuck with it as much as you want, try to break it. All things are on the table, because that's also how we're going to discover all of the tertiary techniques that we're discovering now. And so the ability to use recursive techniques to essentially have long chains of data that can decrypt at certain points is like the beginning of this play. And so I'm convinced that we can actually capture much more. And also, furthermore, I think that the cultural war is the most important one. And so on two sides, one is that when I saw Project Spartacus, I got really excited, because I was like, this is the first piece of true art on the blockchain, in my opinion. Because art fundamentally has a relationship to being able to communicate a radical truth that can't be spoken in public. And so one of the things I've found disappointing, frankly, about Inscriptions so far is I've seen very little art. I've seen a lot of kitsch bullshit that people are pitching as art that they're using on a pump and dump scam. And I'm pretty sure the people involved with that know it. Pretty fucking gross. I hope it works out for you, and I hope you feel good about that at the end. And my challenge to you is that look at what real fucking art does. It radicalizes people and have them understand that what's going on is fucking wrong, and that we need the solidarity to fight it. So if you're in this room and you call yourself an artist, I challenge you not to produce any kitsch bullshit imagery that you can resell because you think you can pump and dump it. I challenge you to produce profound, dramatic, truth-telling art that tells the story of what happened to Julian Assange because he spoke truth in a radical way that enslaved him. And it's very important to understand that we must have solidarity with Julian Assange if we want to speak freely in our society. So if you are an artist, please take your task very seriously to produce art. Stop producing kitsch bullshit that has everybody that is an anarchist that gets that this is important technology to turn around and go, look at all the fucking scammers that were welcomed in because you wouldn't be harsh enough that when you produce your monkey image, that you said that's fucking garbage and you're using it to pump and dump on others. Solidarity to the anarchist mission, fuck the capitalists, okay?
Yeah. I love you all, and I love Erik, and
with that being said, much love and respect, let's speak forthright and honestly. We know it's fucking happening, and it's pretty fucking gross, okay? So some little self-reflection for everybody.
And we promise to self-reflect too, don't worry. We do too.
I have anger issues.
Yep. Speaking of that, I had reached out and doing, how our kind of relationship started. I had reached out when doing the Gatekeepers issue and asked if we could publish this piece that Julian had written, I believe, right previous to the formal launching of WikiLeaks, or certainly around the same time, maybe the same year, 2006, 2005, something like that. And I think it's one of the most important pieces of work of the last, few decades, called Conspiracy as Governance. And you mentioned yesterday in our talk that you kind of view it as almost like the white paper of WikiLeaks, sort of in this way. And I think one of the core elements to kind of jump off what Erik was just saying was that, it really sets up the stage for how the coalitions and the cabals and literally, the conspiracy, which was a co-opted term, obviously, after the assassination of JFK by American intelligence to, dissuade people from looking into the way that all of these things are connected. But the thing that I really get from the piece that I think is so important is that we have to understand that our enemies are, while socio and psychopathic, they're connected and they work together. And there's sort of a unification, whether it's for money or whatever the incentives are, power, but there's some unification. And I think the beauty of Julian really understanding the way that these people work is they work through inversion. And so he looked and wrote this paper and inverted it right back and used it as a calling card to, inspire us to unify and to push back. If our enemy is unified, then our resistance too must be unified. So I wanted to just kind of give you a second to, maybe kind of leave us with something here. But how do you kind of look at that? Why did you consider this sort of the white paper of WikiLeaks? And what about that paper resonates with you that you think, the ordinal community and the Bitcoin community and really just everybody should know and think about right now?
Well, I think what really interested me about that paper and looking back on it now is that, Julian's like a lot of people in this room, trying to use technology to solve real world problems. And that paper really presented the problem that WikiLeaks attempted or would go on later to solve, which was this conspiracy of governance. This, by conspiracy, I mean people working in secret, organizations, whether it's, anyone from the military-industrial complex, the oligarchs who own the media landscape, to other corporations, and how those organizations needed to have secrecy in order to function. In order for those conspiracies to function, they needed a high level of secrecy. And so identifying that problem and then identifying the solution as, well, we have to increase the cost of the secrecy of these conspiracies in order to pull them apart and to make life better for everyone and not just a few at the top. And so how did he do that? He started WikiLeaks. And what was WikiLeaks? It was an organization that protected sources, used jurisdictional arbitrage to keep information online. Obviously, it was pre-Bitcoin, so I'm sure he would have figured out a way to publish directly to Bitcoin if it was there. But it used jurisdictional arbitrage, not in a financial sense, but in a sort of publishing law sense to keep information online. Used the Tor network as well, and the Dropbox, the now famous anonymous Dropbox, where you could leave digital leaks and not be traced. And so it was developing that tool to increase the cost of secrecy to these organizations because of the efficacy of leaking information. So that leaks became more and more, WikiLeaks became a magnet for leaks. And so that's why Julian's in prison essentially, is because it really increased the cost of the secrecy of these conspiracies by making this leaking organization that made it so easy to leak information. So I think, really having that sort of flow on that, Julian presented this problem and here was the solution, I think was, to me, that's what Julian's always been doing, is trying to figure out how to get more justice in this world and using technology and encryption and all the skills that he had to do that, whether it's through WikiLeaks or through earlier innovations like Rubber Hose, which was a another encryption tool that was a layered encryption, so that if you were a journalist or a government employee who had information, you could encrypt it using this tool, and if you were to be tortured, you could only unlock the first layer, and everyone would think that you know, you didn't have anything else, but really the information was lying underneath. So that was in the 2000s. So I think, you know, Julian leading us by example in that sense, using the technology that is available to solve these huge problems for our society. I think that is sort of his legacy and what we all should be trying to do.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank Gabriel and Erik so much for joining me and having this panel and talking about this. I think this stuff is obviously incredibly near and dear to our hearts in a multitude of ways. Yeah, really thankful for the opportunity to be here and speak with you all today. Please do keep making art, but listen to what Erik said and keep that in your heart as well. And yeah, please follow Gabriel and his work, you know, fighting for Julian and being his voice here while his voice is restricted. He's doing incredible work. We all owe so much to Julian. It's so much of our community, the Bitcoin community, the technology. People think of him as a publisher, but he's a brilliant, brilliant cryptographer who set so many standards and ideologies and methodologies and architecture that we all rely on and take for granted today. Please seed these files. Please parse through them. Find the salts. They're out there. I love you all very much. Free Assange.